The battle between the lower self and the higher self. Now let's start with the one that always wins. The lower self, of course, that's the one. The lower self essentially is all the feelings from the waist down. Those emotions of lust, gluttony, greed, jealousy. These are generally feelings that we are told not to act upon because acting upon them is generally not that good for either ourselves or for those around us. But my question is, right, if these emotions are so bad, right? If they're so bad, why did God give us such emotions? Why? They can't be all bad, right? Why would God give us something that is not useful, that is inherently bad? So I don't think they bad. I think with enough discipline, looking at lust, it can be turned into love. With enough discipline, jealousy, envy, greed can be turned into inspiration. I think the point with the higher self and the lower self is to essentially achieve a balance between the two, between the higher self and the lower self, not to completely eradicate either one. The lower self is the most dangerous of the two. It can lead you down a dark and dirty path. Feelings of lust, gluttony lead to malicious actions that may or may not leave you dead or in jail. Trust me, I've seen this firsthand. Speaking to people with rape cases, you can tell that these are people who have abandoned themselves to animalistic desires with zero self control. Beware the lower self. Now, the higher self. The higher self is my favorite. It's virtuous, guided by a divine intuition. It seeks no worldly pleasures, not at all. It's almost alien like in the way it only seeks otherworldly ideas, otherworldly desires. I especially feel comfortable with the higher self. Matter of fact, I really admire it and I seek to embody more of it, you know, because the higher self seeks profound experiences. It seeks, art, love, just wisdom and knowledge. It gives me all around insight into the nature of reality and my own nature as a human being experiencing what we call reality. The higher self is quite a wonder to experience and to embody. There is no fear within the higher self, because fear is a low vibrational idea. There is no fear within the higher self except the fear the lower self holds for the higher self. What I mean by that is, let's take a look at something like sex, all right? But we're just looking at what people would call casual sex, which is quite a weird concept. You know what I'm saying? Casual? I mean, dude, I just don't understand how it can be casual because it's like, it's just, you know what I'm saying? Like, another like metaphor. Is it a metaphor or just another term? But something that people use to describe sex, right? They'll be like, yo, getting hot and heavy. You're gonna get hot and heavy casually. Do you know how much effort it takes to get hot? Like if I want to get hot right now, I have to jog, jog. And you know what I'm saying? Like jogging, it takes up a lot of energy, and that's when I'm gonna like start feeling hot. Now, not only do you want to feel hot, right? You want to feel heavy too. How is that done in a casual manner? It just requires too much energy. All right, but we're getting sidetracked. What I meant by that is to say, let's look at something like casual sex. My higher self does not crave for something like that. It views it as just acting upon lust, you know, uh, acting out your carnal nature, animalistic instincts with no intelligence behind those actions, my higher self would much rather not engage in something like casual sex. But my lower self, the lower self loves these things. The lower self absolutely loves it. You know what I'm saying? So it becomes a battle between the lower self and the higher self. The higher self, which holds no regard for such actions, and the lower self, which absolutely loves these things. So when I keep my frequency quite high, I'm embodying more of my higher self, right? It gets to a point where the lower self starts to feel some sort of way, and I can feel the resistance from the lower self to the higher self because the lower self is like, dude, what about all those other ideas? I mean, as much as I say casual sex is like, something I look at with fond eyes, right? It's not something that I'm fond of, but you gotta understand, I was born in the 2000s, bro. I grew up in the age of the internet, of internet porn, bro. I grew up looking up to Lil Wayne, you know what I'm saying? So just the things that have influenced me are heavily linked to the lower self. So to embody the higher self is not something that is so easily done. You feel me? So it's always a battle between the two. And that is something that I am trying to figure out a way to resolve. Because to be at war with yourself is like fucked up. No, because really it's fucked up, you know what I'm saying? My dad is always telling me something similar. He's always saying that uh, look at it as you are soldiers, right? And you've got the enemy camp, somewhere over there, and you've got your camp here, right? So he's always saying that imagine you were fighting with your comrades in your camp before you even go out to face the enemy. He's always saying that like makes absolutely no sense. If you're fighting with your comrades or you're fighting with the people in your own camp, before you even face the enemy, you're already defeated. The enemy will come and find, oh shit, those niggas already dead. So if there's no harmony within yourself, within your own camp, there's no way you are prepared in any shape or form to face the enemy. And I think that's something quite profound. If you might just decided to share that with you in regards to this idea, the battle between the higher self and the lower self. So to further expand upon this, right, we're gonna look at the greatest fucking movie ever made. Yes, that's absolutely correct. You guessed it. Star Wars. If you guessed anything else, you were absolutely wrong. Star Wars is arguably the greatest fucking movie of all time. You know what I'm saying? Oh, six of them. Fucking cinema gold right there, alright? And we're gonna be looking at my boy Anakin, you feel me? Anakin Skywalker, one of the greatest Jedi ever. I think it was a pretty good Jedi, you know what I'm saying? Driven by love and compassion, you feel me? So we're gonna look at Anakin and Vader, alright? So when we take a look at Anakin, how can we describe Anakin? Anakin is virtuous, alright? He has a very strong sense of justice, alright? He has a lot of compassion. We know this, you know what I'm saying? When he's speaking to Padme and he tells her that Jedi, in a way, are actually encouraged to love. And what is love? Love is the highest frequency of them all. Alright, so Anakin understood this. People just try and boil him down to some sort of teenage fucking, he's just filled with like teenage angst, which isn't entirely true. You feel me? Because Anakin, you can understand his angst, man. I mean, his mother died, bro. Like, how would you feel? All right, so he's not just some angry teenager in episode 2. That's not all he is. All right. So as I said, Anakin, virtuous, embodies the highest frequency of them all, love. He has a very strong sense of justice. He is extremely compassionate. Y'all remember when Palpatine is like to Anakin after Anakin decapitates Count Dooku. Palpatine tells Anakin, leave Obi-Wan for dead. Anakin tells him his fate will be the same as ours. If Obi-Wan dying, I'm dying with them right here, today. very compassionate. You can tell Anakin embodied a lot of the higher self. He tried his best to embody more of the higher self. All right. Now we take a look at Vader. All right. So Vader is heavily influenced by power, the lust for power. All right. He seeks glory. All right. And he wants to be powerful so that he can save the ones that he cares for. But that lust is not driven by discipline. It's not the Jedi way. So when we look at Vader, right, we can define him as having a lust for power, all right? He is lustful, power hungry, conceited, all right, selfish. These are Vader's characteristics. And why I say Vader is lustful, all right? He ends up viewing Padme as nothing more than his possession. We know this because he's like to Obi-Wan, I won't let you take her away from me. Like she's some sort of possession, like he owns her. Vader is entirely lustful, man. He goes out of his way to choke Padme, who is supposed to be his beloved wife. He had completely lost it. He kills those younglings, man. That was a gruesome ass scene. All for the sake of power. Palpatine tells Vader, if you want the power to save Padme, you have to do what I say. And he tells him, go to the Jedi Temple and take care of business. And Vader is ready to stand on top of business, even if that business means killing younglings. Alright? So he's very much so conceited and selfish, power hungry, lustful. He does not care the boundaries that he has to cross in order for him to achieve his goals. Right? He was willing to kill those kids, those younglings like they were nothing. He did not give a fuck. Alright? Kill them younglings just like that. It's crazy. It's crazy how he went from, being the compassionate, virtuous, strong sense of justice Anakin to being Vader. Really, it's crazy. Beware of the lower self, man. So Vader is essentially the lower self, while Anakin is the higher self. And we see in Anakin's slow descent into being Vader, which is basically the descent from the higher self into the lower self. Alright? So everything that I just said right now is basically all the things that Obi-Wan and Yoda warn Luke of. This is what they basically tell Luke the dark side of the Force is about, alright? Luke asks, is the dark side of the Force stronger than the light side? Yoda tells him, no, it's not. It's just more seductive, alright? It's heavily influenced by lust, the lust for power. And that's what happened to our boy Anakin. And next thing we know, you know what I'm saying? Anakin was gone and Vader was all that remained. So Vader essentially is the lower self acting out of emotions of anger, jealousy, greed, lust, envy. And as I said earlier on, the lower self, we are told not to act upon the emotions of the lower self because it generally does not lead to positive results for ourselves or for those around us. And Vader is a prime example of this. So how I've come to understand this battle between the lower self and the higher self, how I've come to reconcile these two opposing ideas is heavily influenced by the GOAT Luke Skywalker, right? Because when we look at Luke, right, in the span of some weeks, all right, he lost his uncle and his aunt, killed by his father. Crazy. And then he proceeds to lose his master, again killed by his father. It's fucking crazy. So all of these experiences are bound to leave Luke feeling angry, feeling so much pain and hatred. Alright? He must have fucking wanted to destroy the Empire. I mean, they took away some very important people from him. Alright? But instead of these experiences leaving him in pain and in trauma, Luke is able to transmute these energies, these emotions of pain and fear. You know what I'm saying? I think one of the reasons why Luke goes to what's that to the Lando system, all right, to save fucking Han and Leia, is because he is very much so afraid of losing his loved ones, the same way he lost his uncle and aunt, and the same way he lost Obi-Wan to the Empire again. So I can understand why he defies Yoda and Obi-Wan to say, fuck that, I've got to go save them, because, to lose them again to the Empire would just be horrible. But these experiences don't leave Luke hurting and in anger. He transmutes them, and he then uses these emotions of pain and anger to further spur his journey towards the light side of the Force. These emotions of sadness and anger made Luke ultimately compassionate. Alright? He understood the pain of losing a loved one, and that made him compassionate instead of making him angry and fearful. Alright? So essentially, in Luke's case, the lower self spurs on the higher self. They are perfectly balanced, they are in sync. Alright? The lower self helping the higher self even shine brighter. Alright? Each sense of self is bringing out the best in the other. And ultimately, that's what I believe you're supposed to do when it comes to the lower self and the higher self. You're supposed to achieve a yin-yang type of balance between the two. You shouldn't try and completely eradicate either one. Not at all. And go watch some Star Wars, man, because Luke is a very good example of this. He shows you how to balance these two opposing ideas within yourself. Instead of being angry, hateful, fearful, like his father, alright, and falling towards the dark side of the Force, he uses those feelings of fear, of pain, of trauma and loss. He transmutes them in order to help him get closer to the light side of the Force. He's a master alchemist, essentially. I think that's what alchemy is all about, transmuting energies. So yeah, man, that's basically my view on the lower self. I hope it gave you some perspective on issues that you may be struggling with, because the lower self and the higher self is a battle that is really hard to overcome. The lower self sometimes craves things that will generally fuck you up. Vader is a good example of this. And sometimes you try and numb these feelings of the lower self, its desires. But I don't think that's the way to move forward. It's to transmute them the same way Luke did. And I think that's a lot more healthy and a much more progressive way of moving forward into the future with the lower self and the higher self. It's not to completely eradicate either one. It's to achieve a balance between the two. So thanks, man, for watching all the way up until the end. Please like it. Alright? It really goes a long way. It really does. Like and consider subscribing if you found this insightful and helpful for your own journey to either the light side or the dark side of the Force. Hopefully you are moving and making your way towards the light side. So may the Force be with you, my friend, and I hope you hit that subscribe button.